Hey guys, what's going on? Today we are going to be looking at the artist Andrew Porter. I came across this guy on ArtStation, and I'm going to include all the links to his work in the description box below. But this guy is an amazing concept artist, illustrator, visual storyteller, however it is that you want to think about it. He did some work on Overwatch, which is one of the pieces it is that we're looking at here. Looks like Overwatch 2. So we're going to jump into this one and break it down. But we're also going to be looking at some of his personal work as well. And I think you're going to be super impressed by this guy. This guy is really, really good. So the first thing it is that I notice whenever I look at this is that we have this overview of a map. This it feels very much like a RPG or something like that, right? But even though this is just a map, that is basically showing the locations of everything in the game. I'm guessing each one of these areas are like different places it is that you could fight in or travel to or whatever. I don't know. I haven't played Overwatch. Anyway, there's still a focal point to the illustration, and we can see that the clouds and the way it is that the clouds are angled, they're all pointing us in one direction, which is to our focal point, which is this volcano with this burst of cloud around it. It almost feels like these clouds are being pulled into uh, this vortex that's being created around this giant mountain, this giant volcano mountain. And notice if we split it into thirds, what can we notice about this? All right. Well, it's not in the middle, right? If you wanted to make this drawing super boring, you would put you would put this volcano dead center. But like I've mentioned before, if you move it off center just a little bit, it helps it make it feel so much more dynamic and so much more interesting. Um, because our eye almost wants to look towards the middle, but it's being pulled to one side or the other, and that creates a counterbalance situation with the rest of the elements of the image, because he's also trying to balance off of this over this leaning to this side, right? So as an example, over here we have more of the land. Over here we have much more water, right? And much more of these islands back here. All of these are counterbalancing against this aspect, right? Now, whenever we zoom into this, what I think is really interesting about this, for one thing, the lighting in this is so beautiful. Like if I take, let me actually fill this with black. Right. If I fill this with if I desaturate this image, I get a couple of different interesting things it is that we can notice about the grayscale of the image. For one thing, he doesn't really go all the way black. He doesn't go all the way dark. These shades are very dark. If I was to take this sampler and I was to sample around here, they get very close to being completely fully black, but they're not. Okay? And the reason that is because it would draw too much attention to itself, and it would throw off the balance of the painting if everything was super, super dark. So like for example, if I was to sample this tree over here, you see it gets very close to being 100% black. But you can see if I was to take this and I was to go completely black with this, go all the way into the black, and I was to put a line right here, and if I zoom out, even though everything is in this grayscale here, um, I feel like my eye is still being drawn towards it very strongly. Okay, and that's something to watch out for. I feel like that's what a lot of like in my Discord channel, I do some feedback paintings and stuff like that. which you can check out in the description box below. But that's something it is that I see a lot with people that are beginner is that we tend, in the shadows, we tend to go all the way dark. And you don't want to do that because you're going to be drawing a lot of attention to it. Like I said, if this was completely black like this, just look how much attention that draws to this one element, this tree element. So everything, and you can also notice that if I look at the lights of this image, I look at something like this, it's not all the way white either. That doesn't mean that it doesn't go all the way into the white, or that it shouldn't go all the way into the white, or it shouldn't go all the way into the black. But we generally want to keep it in the middle. We want to keep the value structure in the middle, somewhere in this area. If you're looking at the screen and you're seeing my slider going up and down here, you want to keep things around in this area so that you can smoothly transition from one to the other. And the way it is that you would accomplish something like this, which is, it seems very complicated, but if you look at it, each one of these castles, such as this one, they all have their own individual shape, they have their own individual design, they have their own value, right? So this one is a little bit darker on the grayscale, than this one, right? Obviously. So this is how it is that you can break these apart. The silhouettes of each one of these buildings is fundamentally different, right? And we still have these elements of big, medium, and small being used throughout each one of the designs of these buildings. We're seeing these same things we talk about in the character designs and in the other videos. We see these same principles being used here. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. He likes to do these like falling light sources onto like hidden doorways and paths and things like that, which I really love about his work. Because what's interesting about it is that you see there's so many different ways it is that he can create a mood and a sense of something dramatic, right? So for one thing, it's very dramatic because we have two different light sources. We have this moonlight that feels very cool that's coming from up top, and it's illuminating everything that it's hitting, right? It's hitting this surface, it's hitting this surface. But then it's also creating, because the light is coming from up top, it's creating these nice shapes here of the door and whatnot, and of this shadow right here. And all of these shadows together, what makes it interesting is if you think about like a face, if you light a face underneath or you light it from above, you get these very dramatic readings of the face, right? Like you think of like a horror movie. Whenever you think of a horror movie, you have somebody holds like a light underneath their face, and by holding that light underneath their face, their facial expression is very dramatic, and it gives off a sense of something terrifying. This light source coming from above and angling downwards, it gives a sense of mystery. It's almost like life itself, or the moon itself, is trying to point him to this doorway right here. But it's not. But it's very subtle, right? Because the light is not fully covering the door. But it feels almost intentional. It feels like nature is trying to communicate with him that this is where he's supposed to go, right? And the cave you do not want to enter, that's the one it is that you must enter into. But the rendering of this guy right here, it's beautiful. It's very simple. As you punch in, you can see that he's dropping colors on here. And that shows how much you can get away with doing something. It doesn't have to be super rendered, um, as long as you're communicating the idea. The eye itself will complete the details of the image in a lot of ways. And so you have these two different elements of contrast. You have this cool light that's falling onto this doorway, and then we have the contrasting element, which is our other focal point, which is the character right here who's holding the torch. Okay, and that character is in warm lighting. So just by taking these two different this concept of uh, making colors light, making them warm or making them cool, and playing with that in this image has created this nice bit of contrast. You can see the contrast in the colors themselves, right? This is very much a red color, and this is obviously like a greenish blue color up here, right? Totally intentional. I like looking at prop designs. I think it's really cool because you can tell there's a lot of storytelling elements within the props. Like where did they get the material to actually build these weapons and these ornaments, right? And you can see repeating patterns. Obviously, you can see repeating patterns on the blade, and then on this ornate egg looking thing here. I almost feel like these are. It feels like these are from two different clans, almost like if these were two different clans of people. I feel like he's communicating that these are two different groups by the design of them, right? Very subtle design differences. There's a stronger contrast with the red and the green here, but also this shape over here feels much more rectangular to me, whereas obviously this one is more circular, right? I mean, obviously you've got these circle shapes here on the image itself, right? But then you also have the egg itself is circular, and all these little buttons and these little things here, they're all circular. Whereas this is much more angular, and then the blade itself looks much more angular, right? If I draw these as straight lines around here, you know, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at basically a bunch of straight lines. Okay. Another really cool image. Again, we have the same concept. He does a very good job of having the light coming in from the top, and it's hitting something it's illuminating the focal point indirectly, right? So the light is coming in from the top right in this corner, and it's hitting this wall, and it's going down, and it just so happens that it's illuminating this figure, and so it makes it feel less less orchestrated. It makes it feel like natural. The lighting feels very natural to the environment. It doesn't feel like we have this big spotlight that's just on this character and this character alone that is keeping our attention there. Even though technically we do. We do basically have a spotlight on this character, right? Because we have this nice warm lighting that's coming from up here and it's hitting him. And then we have another warm light source that's also illuminating here, right? And this is creating a good deal of contrast that's drawing our eye down to him because there's the contrast between the orange and the blue, right? And a really good, nice contrast with his eyes because his eyes, everything else is sitting here in shadow, but his eyes are blue. And so we have this nice back and forth kind of thing going on with the eyes and with the blue, the orange and the blue, right? There's a nice rhythm that's going on here. This is something that we talk about on this channel a lot. Here, here, and then here. The water's like going left to right, right to left, left to right. And then it's basically the water dripping down on this side and the water dripping down on this side, is basically creating and the shadow around him is basically creating this kind of box here. But obviously these lines are also interacting with, or are also connecting with uh, the bottom part of the silhouette. So in a sense, you could say that it's a converging line, because you have this going here, and then you have basically it discontinues while we're looking at this potion maker, but then it continues on the other side, right? And again, we have this same back and forth when it comes to this part of the composition. You have this over here, and then you have this, and then you have this, and then you have this. So it's a nice back and forth. All right, so he's very much framed around these different elements that all support us looking at him. All right, I'm getting close to being done. I think we're just going to rapidly go through these last few illustrations. I mean, this guy's got some beautiful work. Like I said, check him out, and the social media links in the description box below. I believe this is some stuff for some game stuff that he did. Another awesome design. I mean, this is really cool. Again, you see all the different things it is that we talk about on this channel. And my Discord group in the description box is totally worth checking out. I basically have a Discord where I hang out and study with other artists, and we try to push ourselves to get really, really good. And if these videos are helpful to you, make sure to subscribe. Check out my Discord channel below. Check out Andrew's work. You can also see some of my illustration work in the links below. And thanks, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.